Welcome back to Make It Mondays. And this time I'm going to be working on a commission. The commission is for a version of one of these little guys who's a cuddle buddy or a worry friend. So they're going to be new on my store about the time that this is uploaded. But they're cute and they're small and they're squishy and they're hand-sized, or hand-sized for adults. But the person who requested this one wants it to be a rhino with camo pants. So it's going to be this yarn for the pants and this yarn for the rest of the body. So let me get everything set up and I'll show you how I get started. So I'm going to be starting with the camouflage yarn to make the pants, but let me show you approximately how this guy works up. So I start with his two little legs. I work them both to where they connect to the body. So where the color change in the yarn is. Then I start on the body and I work that up, decreasing where I need to, and then adding the arms in. And again, the arms are also started from their little, where their hands would be, up to the shoulders, and then knitted in. And then the head is made and connected in right at the neck seam. So there's actually another piece of knitting in the middle there that is helping to hold that neck in place. So let me put that down. I'm going to grab my crochet hook. And yes, he is knit and I still use a crochet hook because I'm using a magic loop cast on. Some of you might know this from amigurumi crocheting. I use it for knitting. So I've made a loop with my yarn. I do a very short tail because I'm going to pull this and it's going to get longer. I'm going to insert my hook into the middle and pull up my working yarn, making a loop. Then going to pull or pick up a loop with my working yarn and pull it through. And then back to the center, pull up a loop, and then slip another loop through. And I'm going to do that a total of 6 times, trying really hard not to split my yarn in the process. 4, 5, and 6. So because I use this style of crochet hook, I can actually slide my stitches off the back of the needle. If I was using a more ergonomic crochet hook, I would have to pull them off the front. So I put 3 on one needle and 3 on the next needle. Then I'm done with the crochet hook for right now. And then pull that tail up taut. I'm going to leave it on the outside because I find it easier to weave the tails in on the outside for the arms and legs. Okay, so I'm going to knit all the way around. And this entire thing is knit in the round. So there's no traditional seaming, meaning no pick up or take 2 pieces and sew them together. They are connected, but they are not done in the traditional seaming way. Okay, so that's one round. I'm going to knit, and I'm going to increase. I like to do lifted increases. In this case, it's a lifted left increase. And this is also where I go from working with 3 needles to working with 4. And I've heard a lot of people get very scared about working with small circular knitting because of the working with 4 needles. You're still only ever working with 2 needles at a time. There's just extra ends around. Now, I can say that and also acknowledge the fact that it took me a while to get used to it. And I work on teeny tiny needles. These are made for socks. I do not use the 8-inch long double pointed needles because I don't find them comfy. I use these little tiny guys. I've seen these up to about the size that I'm using, which is a size 6. But they do go down to at least a size 0. And yes, her size is smaller than a size 0. I don't use anything smaller than a 2 and I don't really use anything bigger than a 10. Okay, so I've done my cast on round, my setup round, and my increase round, and now I'm just going to be knitting for a really long time. I'm actually going to finish off both legs before I come back, but I'm going to knit all the way up, cut the yarn, put it onto 2 needles, so splitting these 12 stitches into 2 groups of 6 instead of 3 groups of 4. And then I will be back to show you how I make his little bottom. So here are the 2 little legs for our Rhino. I chose not to make his feet gray and just to do the whole legs in the camo color. I use the stitch markers to mark how many rows I've done because all of the patterns that I use are based off of row count rather than based off of measurements for height. But that's more because I'm using stuffed animals than any other reason. And I've already cast it on with a provisional cast on, so a crochet chain with some picked up stitches for the bottom of the Rhino. So as a reminder, it looks like this on the bottom. So let me get these all the way put away. I'm going to go ahead and knit 1 round. So again, this is also worked in this small circumference knitting. And basically, unless for me it's up to the size of a hat, so it's about 16-inch diameter, I'm going to be using double pointed needles of some variety. It's just where I'm comfortable and what I am at this point used to working with. But that being said, if I am using, or if I'm working on something that's bigger than the 16-inch circumference, or I'm working on anything flat, I am on circular needles. Okay, so I've done 1 round. Now it's time to increase. So I'm doing a right lifted increase. And I'm doing 1 more of these. And I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm going to increase the number of needles I'm working with. It is actually very hard to have even stitches with a very small number of needles. That's part of why it's normal to use 4 or 5 to work on projects. Okay, so I did 2 lifted increases there. And we're going to repeat that whole thing 1 more time for his front. So the first side is actually his back, and the second side is his front. And I do have my ball of yarn sitting just off camera. It is contained in a way that it's not going to go rolling away, but that doesn't need to be seen. So left increase and the last left increase. I'm going to do that 1 more time. So knitting a row, doing those increases 1 more time, and I'm actually going to knit 1 more row past there, and then it's going to be time to add in the legs. So I'll be back in just a minute. So I've gotten around to where the legs are going to be attaching. I've also stuffed the legs because once they're fully attached, I'm not going to be able to get to the inside of them anymore. So I'm moving both rows of stitches, so the one from the leg and the one from the body, to the points of their needles. And I'm going to, with a little bit of work, knit those together. Making sure that the stitch from the leg is on top of the stitch for the body. But this is how I'm getting around having seams in this particular pattern or this particular project. And then I'm doing one stitch in the middle. That's where the split between his legs will be. And doing the exact same thing on the other side, but starting with that one stitch. It just takes a little bit of fiddling to get all the stitches pushed exactly where I need them to be, along with, in this case, all the extra needles. Okay. So for this project, I am using a lot of double pointed needles as stitch holders, as making up the different parts. I actually have 3 full sets of these short double pointed needles, partially because they're what I use the most, and partially for scenarios like this where I need to have multiple parts on needles at the same time. Just found it easier than using circular needles for stitch holders and then having to constantly move things over or off of those on back onto the double points. Okay, we're going to push, same thing, getting the 2 needles lined up and just knitting across. Okay. And over. Okay. So that's what the underside looks like. That's what the top side looks like. So I'm actually going to finish off the legs or the pants off camera, along with getting the arms, which are made exactly the same as the legs. There's just a decrease at the top, made and on. So I will come back when it is time to work on the head. So be back in a bit. So here's my little rhino body. I have woven in the ends for his legs, but I don't quite have enough space yet to weave in the ends for his arms. And then here's the base of his head. So made much the same way as the base for the start of the arms and legs. So I'm going to, just like the arms, hold 2 needles next to each other. I'm going to knit 2 together all the way around. Now I've already stuffed the body, because once this is in, I'm not going to be able to stuff anymore. And this row looks really scary, and it's not. It's just really freaking tedious, because I have to make sure that I don't get the needles all out of place. So it's not hard. It's a lot of needles involved, but it's not actually all that hard. A lot of people actually know this is a 3 needle bind off. The only thing I'm doing differently is that I'm not actually binding off. So there's 2 sides. And if I hadn't already stuffed this little guy, this is where I'd be stuffing him. So the character that this is based on actually is a guy, which is why I keep using guy and him in reference. But yes, this is actually based on a character. No, I don't remember the character's name. I was told where he was from, and I looked up photos and, well, images, and designed this guy based off of that. Okay, so there's the base of the head. Now I still have to increase a little bit more because we wouldn't want the neck to be the same size as the head. So I'm going to go ahead and increase, but the increases now aren't going to be quite evenly spaced. So I do want to show you that there were some decreases to make the belly bigger than the shoulders. There's some decreases on the front as well. Okay, so those were lifted left increases, but now I'm going to do a lifted right increase so that I can have a plain front for the face. So this is a rhino, which means he's actually going to have a muzzle. So let me get this row and a little bit more set up, and I will be right back to show you how that muzzle goes in. So this is where this little one is deviating from the regular Cuddle Buddies. So the regular Cuddle Buddies are just a ball, so it's just a sphere going up. And then their mouth is embroidered and their eyes are added. This guy, I have this weird shape that's been cut out of the front. And that's been done by doing short rows back and forth. So when I tested this part out, because I knew how the rest of it worked, I realized that the right option is to treat it like a sock. So I'm actually going to pick up stitches just like I would for a sock. So picking up 4 stitches for every 3 slip stitches on the side. Then going to add a stitch on each side down here. Knit across. Add another mirroring stitch on this side. And then again, pick up 4 stitches for the 3 that are here. So I do my extra add by doing that loop, which is a reverse E cast on. It's not the most stable, but it works pretty well. So on this side, I do have to just do it under that live stitch. And yeah, so that's how it's going to sit for right now. Now I'm going to be working back and forth just like the gusset on the heel of a sock. So slipping the first stitch, going to be purling 3. Actually, I'm going to purl all the way across because I'd rather do all the decreases on the front. Or on the right side. It's way easier for me, especially for this portion. So I'm not going to add any nostrils or mouth or anything. I am going to add a horn once the rest of this is completely done and sewn up. Okay. So I'm going to, again, slip that first stitch. 1, 2, and then I'm going to knit those 2 together. Then work across, making sure that I'm going to do that decrease in the exact same spot on the other side. And then finish off this row. So I am actually making another selvage edge along either side of this needle. And that's going to be picked up by the next step that I'm going to do. So I'm going to keep working down till that decrease is at the very edge. And I will be right back. So there we are with the gusset to make the muzzle. And now I need to close off the top of it, which is going to mean that I'm once again adding some stitches. So again, the ratio is 4 stitches to every 3 rows. Then I'm going to turn so I can work back and pick up the stitches on the other side. I like to not have that extra stitch at the end. I like to have it kind of placed in the middle just for it closes off the hole a little bit better. I'm going to sneak a stitch in there, loop over, then 1, 2. Okay. Now we're going to continue this line of decreases, but we're going to do it on the top, and we're going to do it as short rows. So I'm not adding any height anymore. I'm purely closing off the top of the triangle. And yeah, as always, my ball of yarn is off to the side of me, but off camera. That's the stitch I need to do the purl 2 with. So I'm not saying the correct names of those decreases because I actually have to think about what the correct names are. I just do I want this one on top and go from there. So I believe that side is a SSK. I believe the other one is technically a SSP, but I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. Again, I just know the motions I have to do in order to make the stitch work. And as long as the fabric is right, as long as the critter's right for the ones where I'm making stuffed animals, it doesn't really matter what the name is. Now, of course, if I'm going to ever write this pattern down, yes, I will make sure it's correct. And if I was ever to do lace work, I would absolutely make sure it is way more accurate. But part of why I do stuffed animals is I can just follow the slants in the material. So I am having to push the little nose out most of the time, just so that it stays poking out. So this is the last decrease on each side. And I do still have 2 stitches more than I did when I started. So what I'm actually going to do is on the next full round, I'm going to decrease in the main body as well, along with resituate all the stitches so it's even numbers and all of that again. But from here till basically I add the horn, it's going to be pretty close to a normal little critter. But there you go. That's the side of how his muzzle is going to look. And I'm going to add the horn right there. I am also going to add the eyes at those points. So his eyes will be a little offset. But yeah, that's basically how this little guy works up. He does have a helmet. And the helmet's going to be worked just like the neck seam was. So I'm going to build the helmet separate and then, or build the brim of the helmet separate and then knit into it and work up. But that's how it looks. I will be back in just a second to show you the final critter. So here we have our finished little cuddle buddy. So this is our little Rhino. So I added his horn and I added his little helmet. He is so cute and still so squishy. He's gonna go off to the person who purchased him in a couple days. And then I have no idea when it's going to its final owner because it's not him. But this is the little cuddle buddy from this episode. And these little guys will hopefully be up on the website soon. They are customizable. And if you have characters that you want me to try, I can always give it a shot. Can't promise that I'll always be able to do it. So, we'll see you next time on Make It Mondays.